on his first fucking day in power, President Joe Biden Jr. just signed executive orders into action that will save the lives of uncountable numbers of not just wild animals, but human beings as well as domesticated animals. Yes, dogs and cats can get cancer just like humans can. Matter of fact, cancer is the #1 cause of death in dogs, so pay attention if you care about your pups, not to mention polar bears, wolves, and literally every single other species of animal on Earth that this affects. So I'm gonna break that down for you. On his second day in power, Biden did something that will have an even greater impact, and I didn't even read about this in the news. The only reason I know about it actually is because I was doing research for a video about what the animal rights movement should be doing to demand Joe Biden move faster, demand he do more for animals and for the climate emergency. Lo and behold, I Google it, and he already did it. He did it in his second day in power. It's fucking fantastic. So I'm gonna tell you about that. I'm also gonna tell you about something bad he did for animals, not something that is, hold up. My dog's caught on something. We're walking together. Not something that is going to increase the amount of suffering or killing in the world, just something that's going to maintain the status quo, but a horrible status quo, not from the Trump years, from all of history before that, but nevertheless, I'm going to call Biden out for that. Myself and all the other politically literate vegans out there who were saying that Biden is the vegan option, in the ballot box, we weren't doing so because Biden is Gary Yourofsky or he's James Aspie. Shout outs to James Aspie, by the way, for all the bullshit people are subjecting you to for telling the truth about the animal holocaust. Count myself as another Jewish person who supports you on that, grandson of an Auschwitz survivor. I'm going to be making a video about that separately. In any case, we're not saying that Biden is James Aspie or he's vegan or anything like that. The reason we were saying that Biden is the vegan option at the ballot box is because billions of animals' lives depended on Biden beating Trump, because there's a mass extinction of a difference between their policies. And President Biden proved me right within hours of taking power. Within hours. And to everyone who's been proven wrong by this, who says, bullshit like, oh, all politicians are the same, who repeat, what has Joe Biden done in his 40 years, all kinds of stuff exactly like this that he tried to do as a senator, you just weren't paying attention. To everyone who's been proven wrong by this, I'm not gonna be mean. I just wanna say it's really important to pay attention before you talk about an issue. You know, you're never gonna hear me talking about nuclear physics, about particle physics. Why? Because I don't know anything about that. Political science, history are my specialties. That's what I majored in university, but way more important than that, you don't need a university degree to talk about this stuff. You just need to be paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, you should form an opinion after you inform yourself. Okay, so what did Biden do on his first day? First of all, he stopped the construction of a literal river of toxic waste that was going to be constructed through the United States. For those of you who don't know, the Keystone XL Pipeline was vetoed, was stopped on the first day. And for people out there who don't know about the tar sands of Alberta, the only way I could possibly explain this to you is by saying it is effectively a gigantic tumor on the face of the earth. The biggest tumor on Earth, in fact, the biggest industrial project on Earth, spewing out toxic waste at a ridiculous rate. It is an area the size of approximately the entire United Kingdom, where they basically strip the boreal forest off of the earth. And that means, so right there, you're chainsawing trees, you're destroying the habitat of animals, you're killing everything from chipmunks to wolves to bears, an enormous number of animals of many different species who live there. Not only are they cutting the forest down for this oil, and the oil there is not in pools underneath the earth like it is in Saudi Arabia or possibly Texas. The oil there is essentially mixed in with the soil. It's dirt. It's called bitumen. And in order to filter that out, they're basically draining all of the freshwater resources of Alberta and creating these massive pools of toxic waste where birds will land, and pools that guaranteed that are continuously polluting rivers and fresh water supplies, so that bears, wolves, human beings, primarily indigenous people who live downstream, are getting cancer. There's horrible pictures you can find of animals with giant tumors who live downstream from this place. And then, of course, once the oil is burned, it's driving global warming. It's driving climate change, which, you know, everybody knows about, obviously, polar bears dying as a result of global warming. It's tragic and it's horrible to see those images of starving polar bears as their habitat melts away. But global warming is affecting the entire globe. One of the animals, one of the images that I can't get out of my head when it comes to climate emergency comes from one of those David Attenborough specials where he showed elephants migrating through their habitat, which is desertifying as a result of global warming. And this baby elephant who's dying of thirst, essentially collapsing, and her mother trying to wake up the baby, doing everything possible to get her baby to keep going, to find more water that isn't there because of the changing climate. And it's absolutely tragic. As many of you know, elephants mourn their dead. Elephants are people. Elephants care about their own. And it's not just elephants, obviously. Lions are going through the same thing. Animals in every single ecosystem on Earth are being affected by global warming. So when Biden does something like that, he doesn't just protect the animals in that specific spot. He's protecting animals and human beings across the Earth. Okay, number 2. President Biden stopped the motherfucking wall. The wall is over. For those of you who don't know, former President Trump's border wall was cutting through the habitat of 111 different endangered species. Animals like jaguars, of which, no, I can't even say that plural. There's only one jaguar left in the entire United States. His name is El Jefe. Lives on the American side of the border. For him to be able to have little jaguar pups or kittens with other jaguars, needs to be able to cross the border. So many endangered species that are on the brink of extinction that need freedom of movement, and that border wall wasn't just going to cut their habitat in half. The construction of the wall itself is destroying habitat. So what a fucking relief. Thank dog Biden's president, and that shit is over. Number 3, Donald Trump and the Republican Party have been fighting for decades to allow for oil drilling inside the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. It's supposed to be a motherfucking refuge, and these fuckers want to drill for oil in it. They've been fighting over it for decades. For anyone who is still ignorant enough to say things like, all politicians are the same, there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats. Here's the difference now that Biden's in power, and this is stopped. And I'm going to tell you why this is permanent now. Is even if Republicans win in 2024, there's not going to be any oil drilling in the Arctic Ocean. Let me tell you why. Because right now, as many of you may have heard, the richest man on Earth is Elon Musk. The biggest car company on Earth is fucking Tesla. Okay, we are in the middle of we are in the beginning of the electric car revolution. Electric cars are taking over because they're superior to gas-powered cars. Not just because environmentalists are buying them, they're just better fucking cars. Okay, they drive fantastically. They're 10 times cheaper to recharge than it is to refuel a toxic fueled vehicle, and they're 10 times cheaper to maintain. The future is electric, and there's no stopping that. Everybody sees what's happening with Tesla, and every single major car company on Earth is investing billions of dollars into going electric. By 2024, according to Stanford economists who recently published a massive study on this, the majority of new cars in the world are going to be electric. What that means is that demand for oil is going to start going down heavily. And when you stop using oil, you stop using the most expensive oil first. What's the most expensive oil in the world? It's the tar sands of Canada, first of all, what I just told you about. But it's also oil that's hard to reach, like stuff that's in the Arctic Ocean that you need to send oil tankers or pipelines all the way up there to access. So even if Trump doesn't go to prison, if he doesn't get a heart attack from eating all that McDonald's in the next 4 years, and somehow runs for re-election and wins, people didn't learn from the first experience, it's not gonna matter in terms of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, in terms of many other oil extraction projects. Coal is also on its way out. Trump couldn't save it. You know, had Clinton been president for the last 4 years, we would be in a much better situation than we are now, of course. We would have gotten rid of coal faster. But coal, again, is an obsolete technology. It's from the 1800s and is dying out from solar power and from wind power. And that progress is only going to accelerate over the next 4 years, regardless of Biden being president. This is economic momentum. And on top of that, Biden is president, meaning he's going to do everything possible to accelerate that process, meaning it's permanent change. Okay, we're destroying the global fossil fuel industry, the toxic fuel industry, before it destroys the planet. This is something that needs to be done. The only thing that we need to take care of is the people who work in those industries, make sure we have alternative sources of employment for them so they can put food on the tables, etc. Biden is on top of that. Biden and the Democratic Party want to do that. They want to spend $2 trillion to build renewable energy, for a massive green jobs program, to build renewable energy to support the electric car industry. And they need your support in doing that. So the final action that Biden has taken, the biggest one, is that he has put a moratorium on the development of all oil, gas, and coal on public lands in the United States. That's only a 60-day moratorium, so they can institute a more permanent policy once the Interior Secretary is confirmed. But it was one of his campaign promises, and it took him 24 hours to deliver it. To all of you haters, to all of you skeptical, cynical people who are like, "Yo, politicians just say what, I don't care." Yeah, I also don't care what politicians say. Like I said, I care about their actions. But if you were paying attention, you know that Joe Biden has been doing stuff like this his entire career as a senator, as vice president. So we shouldn't be surprised at all now. We should have obviously supported him, and I'm glad that we did to become president. To give you an idea of how impactful this is, about 25% of all oil and gas extraction is happening on public lands in the United States. And the United States, I should double check this, but I believe they're actually bigger than Saudi Arabia. They're now the biggest oil producer in the world. So this will have a massive impact. The estimated amount of greenhouse gas emissions from that extraction is between 500 and 550 million tons. That's megatons of greenhouse gas emissions. And I think it's really important that we talk about greenhouse gas emissions in terms of megatons, because the damage done by the climate emergency is equivalent in many cases to the damage done by nuclear weapons, in terms of devastating entire ecosystems, in terms of the fact that entire cities are going to be underwater, are going to be uninhabitable, just like they would be if they were destroyed by a nuclear bomb. So massive respect to Joe Biden for that. Now, what did he do wrong? As some people have pointed out, Joe Biden appointed a former dairy industry lobbyist to be the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, which is obviously horrible. The dairy industry, for people who don't know, is based on rape and murder. It's based on stealing baby animals away from their mothers and murdering both of them eventually. The way you can oppose Vilsack's nomination, because he has not been confirmed yet as Secretary of Agriculture, is to write to your senator. The Senate confirms cabinet level secretary, so you need to write to your senator and say hell no to Vilsack. Even if we can't stop him, even if this nomination does proceed, I think it's really important to raise a shitstorm about it, because even in doing so, we help the animals, because we raise awareness about the fact that the dairy industry is based on rape and murder. No amount of progress is good enough until we shut down the slaughterhouses, until we stop the destruction of wild ecosystems on this planet. So what should the animal rights movement be doing to prioritize what we can achieve in the next 2 years? Why do I say 2 years? Biden's gonna be president for 4 years at least, but in American politics, generally whoever wins the presidential election loses the midterm election. So assume in 2022, assume the worst. Assume Republicans take back either Congress or Senate or both. So major laws that we want to pass cannot be passed, can only be passed in the next 2 years. Meaning we have now less than 2 years, you know, time is ticking to get as much as we can done. So I would love your ideas. I've got lots of my own ideas. I'll share them in an upcoming video about what we should be prioritizing, what's politically realistic that will save the greatest number of lives. That first point, politically realistic, is important. What we can do, you know, we could dream about anything. We could say, let's shut down every slaughterhouse in America. That is eventually going to happen. I hope it's going to happen by the end of the decade. Is it going to happen by 2024? I'm pretty doubtful of that. But if you want to know what is possible, there's a saying in American politics, as goes California, so goes the nation. As in, California is more progressive than the rest of the country, which can at times be relatively backwards. So for example, we've seen California outlaw animal experimentation on cosmetics. I'm really honored to have been a part of that campaign. And that campaign has sent shockwaves around the world. Other states are following suit. We've seen California outlaw the entire fucking fur industry. Outlaw the trapping of animals and the sale of animals for fur. So is that realistic in the next 4 years? Quite possibly. Who's gonna push for it? Fucking we are. No one's going to push for it if the animal rights movement doesn't. And on that note, I just want to say, if you want to have some fantastic ideas, to know what's going on in California, to see what we can support, I highly encourage everyone to follow Social Compassion in Legislation. Judy Mancuso is a hardworking genius behind so much of the progress that has happened in California. She's worked with other groups, of course, but Social Compassion has achieved so much. So follow them. I hope that she can lead on a national scale now. push the United States government to do some of the things they've done in California now that Democrats are in control. And give me your ideas. Oh, and guess what? Next Wednesday, Biden has over 100 more executive actions coming on the climate crisis. I'm looking forward to reading the news next Wednesday. Every day of his presidency, the first few weeks, he's taken a specific focus. You know, day one was the pandemic. He's looking at healthcare. He's looking at racial justice. But this coming Wednesday is going to be the climate emergency, mass extinction, massive impact for animals. So probably going to be too many things he's doing for me to make a whole video explaining for it. But have a fantastic weekend. Relax a bit. President Biden's in power. Don't relax too much because we're going to push his ass to do more. But thank you to everybody. Thank you to every single person who voted for President Biden, who made this happen. And for those of you who didn't, you know, pay closer attention. Cheers.